In somebody else's worldview, this is the Garden of Eden. The land, the waterways, it's all right here. It's always been right here. We have so much to be thankful for.
Here in the Pacific Northwest, there's something unique and unusual about where we live, having these salmon, having these streams.
Such an abundance of resources and connections for time immemorial.
All of those sacred cycles are gifts. Lake Sammamish, Kokanee are that unique kind of gift.
Good morning. This is your forecast for Sammamish, Issaquah, and Bellevue. One more dry day before the rain does come back for much of western Washington. So enjoy the sunshine while we have it. Have a great day.
Puget Sound is estimated to grow by several million people by 2050.
We want to live in a place where we have native salmon and we want to be able to coexist with those populations. Lake Sammamish, Kokanee is one of those unique populations. How do we manage the aquatic biological world with these other very real needs?
Their name in Lachute is Cilias, the little red fish. They're trying to keep that connection because it's in them, it's ingrained in them to come back and return. But they need help.
We're not simply helping to recover a fish, we're helping to reconnect the community itself with these lands and these waters that actually define the region.
We're here today to honor the extraordinary effort to save our little red fish from extinction. It was a great example of government agencies, nonprofit groups, citizens, and other organizations working together for a good cause.
Today is about bringing everybody together to recover the Kokanee salmon that lives in Lake Sammamish and is a resident of this community along with our residents here.
We're releasing Kokanee fry into this creek. So give them words of encouragement to return in 3 or 4 years, okay?
We're here today to offer our prayers and blessings to these little Kokanee fry as they begin their journey. These little redfish do not swim out to sea. Their fate lies in our hands. Their success will be a result of the choices that we make now and in the future.
Lake Sammamish, Kokanee are a life history variant of sockeye salmon. The other Pacific salmon spend 90% of their life in the ocean. Kokanee spend their entire life in a lake system. Imagine a watershed that contains 2 lowland lakes. Lake Sammamish captured a lot of water coming out of the mountains and foothills. The outlet of that lake flowed through a wetland for 12, 13, 14 miles down to Lake Washington, and then the same type of wetland at the outlet into the Duwamish Basin. Now imagine a sea-run sockeye moving up into Lake Washington through that longer wetland into Lake Sammamish, spawning, and then those juvenile fish able to stay in that lake their entire life. They become isolated for thousands of years and develop their own genetic identity. What remains today is this genetically distinct and special population.
They're one of the only native populations of kokanee in the state of Washington. What makes it special is that it's right in the middle of an urban, suburban area. And so it's got its own challenges.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing.
Good evening, Council. Money Magazine and Realtor.com just named Sammamish as the 9th best places to live in the nation. We've heard these things before. Is it any wonder that we all came here? But when we came here, did we say close the gates? No. Did we say no more development? No.
The biggest challenge right now for the Lake Sammamish Basin is where will the density go? 2010, we had 35,000 residents here in Sammamish. Today, we have 65,000. If you start to look at Puget Sound, the expectation is that we will have 2 million more people coming here by 2050. The state of Washington has the Growth Management Act, which is trying to preserve the rural areas. So they drew the urban growth line. We are inside that urban growth line. There's a lot of pressure for the Lake Sammamish Basin to take more of these numbers. And so you're trying to lay out something that's sustainable.
Everyone around us, there's no office space available. Amazon is building, Google is building. The residents of this town have lost out on the economic boom that's been taking place over the last 10 years in every other city close by.
The whole region has to work collaboratively together to accommodate that growth. And how are we going to do it to protect our urban forestry and our lake and the ecology that we have here?
This population of kokanee has fluctuated quite a bit. We've had years with really strong returns and years with very, very low returns. The last year, in the winter of 15-16, we had around 6,000 fish return across all the tributaries. You might think, okay, well, everything's okay. We have good years, we have bad years. But when we really drill down into the details, even the most simple models suggest that this population is trending downward toward zero if the current trends continue. Development can certainly have impacts. There's a number of other factors or stressors to the population. It's always easy to name just one, say that's the culprit, but we have predation, non-native and native fish, disease, bacteria, parasites, viruses. So there's a whole host of other issues or concerns. Having a closed system, that really makes it uniquely ours to manage, which is completely different than almost all the other Pacific salmon. If we can get this population back to stable between 1,000 up to 10,000 or so fish, that would be a huge success story. The stakes are high because it's a rare native species and it's important culturally and socially.
Proceed to southeast Mount Si Road, then turn right.
We at McKenna Sweet Dorman Sista. Stokwabi Abshed. Hello, my name is McKenna Sweet Dorman. I'm from Snoqualmie. It is a teaching of my people. It's important to know who you are and where you come from. I work out of our environmental and natural resources for the Snoqualmie Indian Tribe in our outreach program. Snoqualmie are from here. We have always been here. And our creation story for this region, the transformer came through and created those waterways. We're taught that on every waterway, peoples were created. And likewise, he created the fish for those locations and for the people. In Lake Sammamish, we had the wonderful, miraculous Kokanee salmon, our little red fish. For time immemorial, peoples came to Lake Sammamish to fish the kokanee because they were so coveted. And they were plentiful back then. In recent years, though, this population has dwindled. So we are working with community members to help restore the kokanee. There is an unbroken connection to these places and to all of the animals and spirits that are in these areas. We have that duty to advocate for those who have no voice, the fish, and making sure that others are able to know that story, that history, and to join in. We hope to continue these efforts with our surrounding communities who also call this place home.
We formed the Kokanee Work Group in 2007 to get more focused in identifying what the problems are for kokanee and then going to fix those problems.
We're going to talk about background.
We've been at work since then to prevent extinction, to rebuild the population, and eventually reestablish a fishery for kokanee on Lake Sammamish.
The number of eggs that went into.
The Kokanee Work Group includes the 4 cities around the watershed, the county, non-governmental organizations, the state agencies, federal agencies, residents around the watershed, and tribal participation as well, which is really important to what we need to get done. It's a voluntary group. We don't have contractual obligations that drive folks to the table. Folks are there because it's the right thing to do. We identify the problems, we set priorities, and we rely on the wisdom and the resources of the folks who come to the table to get those things done. That's how we have to work.
The most optimistic scenario, and we talked about this before.
We have to be really thrifty and smart and focused.
It's really valuable to have.
We always have to ask ourselves, are we doing the right thing for the fish with the resources that we have?
We have to mobilize our resources to get those things moving.
We do these surveys 3 days a week. Go down to the lake and start working your way up slowly and look for live fish, dead fish. I'm not seeing any. Are you seeing any, Dan?
No.
This population of kokanee, they'll spawn in these small creeks during the winter when the flows are up. They'll build redds, which are egg pockets, and then those egg pockets incubate throughout the rest of the winter. We're about halfway through the spawning period for this season. Unfortunately, we really haven't seen too many fish this year. Hoping to get a few more fish today. 2 years ago, we probably had about 300 redds, and going up here, maybe 200 or 300 feet. Up until around 2003, there were 2 runs of genetically distinct kokanee in Lake Sammamish. The early or summer run, that was the run that was most well known. By the time people realized there was a problem with the summer run, it was too little too late, and that population died out in 2003. We learned our lesson the hard way. We don't want the same thing to happen again with this run.
Hey Jim, I think we might have one up here.
Looks like a Kokanee red.
Oh, there's a nice red. That's a textbook Kokanee red. The dimensions, the particle size. The red, or the egg pocket, is right here. And you can see this small gravel mound. It's been scoured out to cover that egg pocket. Ideally, there are maybe 900 or 1,000 fertilized Kokanee eggs. Those embryos will incubate in there for about 5 months.
Red number 1.
This is nice to have it, at least one red in the system so far. Folks are getting a little nervous about this year. This is the second year in a row where we've had very low returns of spawning adult fish. You know, we're trying to figure out reasons why. We've tried to take a really close look at the numbers and conditions in the lake and in the streams. The fish that produced this red had to work their way up through 2 culvert systems, numerous bridges, a number of predators, bobcats and otters, herons, you name it. So they're fighters to get up here. If next year is another very low year, it'll be a real crisis. We'll keep putting our heads together and trying to think creatively and use all the resources that we have to do what we can to preserve this native kokanee population.
Most people think about, when you think about salmon in the areas, coho and chinook. But the real historic Seattle, the kind of thing that the Native Americans took advantage of, or that the early pioneers saw here, were these little red fish. There were kokanee all through the Lake Washington, Lake Sammamish Basin, and there were a lot of early historical accounts about just how abundant those were. The kokanee in Lake Sammamish are what's left of the kokanee in this basin. A lot of these early scientists were collecting these fish and trying to document what was here. And we have, very fortuitously, kokanee that were collected from the 1800s. Can you believe it? Somebody was out there collecting fish and putting them in a museum. So those fish are available for us to get genetics from. So we're just at the really early stages of trying to get DNA out of these historic samples from the 1880s, but it's clear that we're getting the genes that we were trying to sequence, which is really exciting to me because that's going to be our connection to the genetics of the original populations here. The oldest specimens that I've been able to find come from 1888. It looks very much like a kokanee you might find now. A little bit smaller. A lot of these early scientists that were collecting these fish didn't have a good sense of life history information about seasons of spawning, how big do they get. So very often these Western scientists would go to the people who had been living there for thousands of years, who had a much keener sense and connection to the biology of the area.
My mom said, I was born a Kokanee salmon. 14,000 years we have been there, walking, hunting, fishing.
That's our connection as Snoqualmies. We need to be there for the health of the land. In such a short period of time that's been interrupted. Those connections are so important. They're so important. We were one of the largest tribes in the area, the most powerful tribes in the area. Beautiful Lake Sammamish was our home. The kokanee are how we survived year-round. Kokanee are deeply part of our culture, part of our traditions, so much so that you would have this reflected on dance regalia. We are made of, we are not separate from kokanee. We've been here for thousands of years. Everything around us is us. Everything around us is made up of our living and dying. Just like the salmon coming and offering their bodies, they're giving everything, everything for the next generation.
We're here at Salmon Days in Issaquah. We're doing outreach. Hi, would you like a sticker? Thank you. The story that we're telling this year is that tribal presence in this location, specifically living culture, the fact that we're still here today. There's also some more information here about the tribe if you're interested.
Thank you.
Not many people walking through know who the tribe is. I think that their eyes are opened a lot of the time. We've always been here, we've never left. And these Kokanee have never left. This is their home. Through the restoration work that we're doing, and the partnerships that we've built, we're helping to return those Kokanee and the tribe home too.
See how hard it is for salmon to get upstream these days? There it is. Oh, good job, good job.
Here we really identify ourselves with salmon Northwest culture. If we can show people that, this is something unique and unusual about where we live, having these salmon, having these streams, you develop a sense of, this is where I live, this is what's natural for the area. So I think it's been very helpful having a Native American component to lead what's going on here.
They are also our major sponsor again this year. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Snoqualmie Tribe.
The work that I think we all do as part of the tribe in this education process is something very, very close to home. This needs to be carried on, and I'm carrying that on and prepping for the next 7 generations. I was very fortunate in my upbringing to be raised with my people, to be raised in my culture, hearing the language, hearing the names of the plants, the animals, and the places. There was never a time in my life that I didn't know where I was, that I didn't know my connection there. It wasn't until I got older that I recognized that that was not everyone's experience. If I was to keep that to myself or keep it alive only within my family or in the tribe, I could. But it's very important in our culture to acknowledge, to make sure that there is that shared exchange and that the surrounding communities recognize that they're now part of something much larger, to have an understanding of everything that's happened, what the history actually is, and the complexities of that. In the mid-1800s, there was a huge influx of people moving from all over into this area. We had to change from our traditional ways of gathering food and being able to travel as we would in our homeland. We couldn't sustain ourselves that way with the people coming in, and so we had to get jobs to earn money to live in this new society. We worked in the lumber mills, in the farming and hops. We were transitioned out of living in our longhouses. We were able to move to Lake Sammamish, which is still traditional for us. There was still space on the eastern shore where we were able to homestead. But in order to legally homestead, we had to build white-styled homes. All that time we were able to keep certain traditions alive. The Kokanee provided that food source for us to be able to stay in that location year-round. Over time, people continued to move here. The homestead land was taken, and by the 1920s, I believe, are the first cottages within that homestead area that were built and sold.
I live in Sammamish, Washington, on the east side of Lake Sammamish, on Ebright Creek. I moved here in 1973. It was quite rural, a little over 6 acres with a house and sort of a barn on a creek, and we purchased the property. Shortly after we arrived here in the late fall, my son, I think he was 5 at the time, he came running up, "Daddy, Daddy, there's red fish in the creek." And I went down and looked, and immediately when I saw them, I said, "My gosh, it's sockeye salmon." Upon further examination, I found out, though, this was a freshwater race of sockeye salmon that lived in Lake Sammamish. I became fascinated with the kokanee. The people that owned the home before, they used to be unhappy about the kokanee that come up because the fish die after they spawn, and their dogs would roll in them. They did everything they could to block the kokanee from getting up the creek. Of course, the dying of the kokanee in the spawning creeks has a central place in the web of life in this area. During the 1990s, when there was a fair amount of development that was taking place, Zackuse Creek had a nice run of kokanee. There were some developers that came in and absolutely devastated the creek. They ran bulldozers down the side of a hill and across the creek. They cut the trees down, and there was a great deal of gravel and sand that came down the creek as a result of that, and the run in Zackuse Creek petered out. That was the same time when the run into Issaquah Creek was dwindling rapidly, and it was obvious to me that this kokanee population was in trouble.
We just got the geotech report back from the consultant. My name is Tawny Delzell. I'm the Stormwater Program Manager with the City of Sammamish. Right now, we're trying to restore spawning habitat on Zackuse Creek. Quaternary alluvium on the other side of the culvert here. My first introduction to the Zackuse project was at a council meeting, hearing public testimony from these two amazing individuals. The first was a private property owner, Wally Pereira.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Wally Pereira. I've been a resident of Sammamish since 1974.
He described 2 streams. One stream on his property had the culvert that was a barrier, and he had replaced it in 2013 with his own fish passage culvert. He described how that year there were thousands of kokanee running through his newly replaced culvert. The second stream that he described was Zackuse Creek. The culvert there was trying to drain 245 acres into a 30-inch pipe. It was constricting flows. It was a fish passage barrier. So the second person who came to make public testimony that night was McKenna Sweet Dorman.
With us tonight is McKenna Dorman from the Snoqualmie tribe.
She brought old photographs of her ancestors and described them living and subsisting on the shores of Lake Sammamish and specifically on Zackuse Creek.
Sammamish, along the creeks that today bear our family names, such as George Davis and Zackuse Creeks.
Using kokanee as part of their survival. And the city council was so moved by these testimonies that they immediately asked staff how fast we could get the culvert replaced on Zackuse Creek. And Zackuse Creek is the first barrier that the city has identified for removal.
This population was already in bad shape. And then by December 2017, that the situation had gotten remarkably worse. We were starting to see data about lake conditions. We were seeing so many fewer fish than we anticipated. We're pretty conservative about what we expect to see. And it wasn't even coming close to our conservative estimates.
We just are not seeing the kokanee. I was expecting 1,000 to 2,000 fish coming back this year, and to date we've seen 6, which is an incredible disappointment. But the current situation has really opened up the entire toolbox to try and figure out what's happening with these kokanee. So new technologies, strategies, techniques that have worked for other fish in their recovery are all on the table, and we'll be meeting soon to talk about it.
You guys ready? Okay, what we need to do with the next hour and 15 minutes or so is talk about what are our options for action. What can we do in preparation for the return that we're anticipating next fall to optimize the success of those fish?
Let's just plan worst case scenario. What if we only get 25 fish back next year? What are we going to do?
We think, as resource managers, it must be easy to figure out this lake. We know where all the streams are. There's a ton of monitoring information. But really, there's still a lot of complex things that we just cannot figure out about this lake. It just really surprises you.
What's really happening to them in the lake? We've got water quality, predation, disease. How are we going to hold the species so that we can work on some of the longer term trends?
Think of major predatory birds. If it was as easy as saying, okay, if we get rid of the DDT, everything will be great. Our problem is much more compound than that, and it's really hard to pick out which impacts do we really try and tackle.
We've been doing the supplementation program.
Yeah.
And the Zackuse Culvert project will be very important for us to finish because we need more habitat. We know that long term. I guess what we have to decide is what are those extraordinary measures that we need to take.
What if we went ahead and took some of the males that come back next year and save those gametes in a fertilization program to keep that population going while we come up with a longer term solution?
I think cryopreservation is a real thing for us at this point.
I think we have to have multiple strategies for what we do.
The fish that come back next year, they're going to be the most fit fish. So they're going to be extremely valuable going forward.
We trap on every tributary that we can and check daily.
What do you do with them? We don't want to put all our eggs in one basket, no pun intended, but do we let 10% spawn naturally, 25% put them at the hatchery at Issaquah, 25% in remote incubators? Do we take 30% and put them into broodstock? Can we get that going? Let's all agree that next year is going to be, it's either all or nothing.
Good morning. The Alliance of Tribal and Local Governments, of cities and state and federal agencies, of landowners and residents has worked together with the shared goal of restoring healthy, resilient kokanee population.
We need as many people to know about the precarious situation for kokanee as possible.
We must take concerted action right now.
When we have the opportunity to share news about what we're doing, whether it's happy news or it's bad news, it's important that folks hear that and that we address that together.
Our emergency actions will include using the latest technology to protect the unique genetic stock of Lake Sammamish kokanee.
We've decided to do several things that are new for us. One is that we will be using special traps to catch returning spawners and take them to the hatchery to spawn them. We also will be using what we call egg boxes or remote site incubators, where we can put eggs and those fish will hatch out and go into the lake. We're also going to initiate a captive broodstock program and raise those fish in that facility to preserve that portion of the population.
Together, we can and we will ensure that this little red fish will once again flourish here in King County.
We are in our second week of our road closure. We spent the last couple of days excavating out the existing culvert and excavating the 20-foot deep hole in the middle of the road. Today, we are setting the box culvert pieces. This is going to provide our fish passage under the arterial. It is a big deal. In the next few months, this project will be done, and the Snoqualmie tribe, they're going to help us with the restoration native plantings, putting in the stream bed gravel, and then eventually sending the stream back through it. I feel like we're doing our small part in the Kokanee restoration efforts.
We're on Zackuse Creek at a restoration event. It's the most wonderful feeling to see how much support we have and how much excitement there is. It's wonderful.
We're doing a good job. She's pretty strict.
I'll try to get it too. My name's Maria and I'm 8 years old. I like digging stuff. It's really fun for me. And I also like helping the salmon too, which we're doing today. I've planted 5 trees, had a snack break, and made a couple friends. I hope that the trees grow and that it can make a better environment for the salmon while they're going down the stream. I hope that the salmon can also come back in bigger numbers too.
I'm sure. I come from Beijing, China. We live here just 2 years. Seattle is so amazing. A lot of forest, a lot of tree. But after that, I found that there are a lot of new building, a lot of people move here. So the environment got a lot of change. So I want to do something for this new home. Kokanee is meaningful to this area. I want to know more about them. I hope what we do today can give them help.
This is called red osier dogwood.
I brought my daughter with me. She's 5. I just want her generation can protect the whole world. Your life depends on this environment. You need to protect your home.
It's easy to blame, but we are all stewards. We have to do something.
It's necessary for a healthy system to have a healthy connection to that land and respect for that life.
Today's my day to do the surveys. It's very early in the return. It's just the end of the first week. We had a real nice rain event last night. It really came down when winter rains start to kick in. Flows will come up in these streams. It will make upstream migration a little bit easier. We're hoping that pulled in a few fish. Nice. There's a red right here. Brand new. That's really encouraging. Didn't see too many of those last year. Yeah, there's another 2 egg pockets right here. And there's a female sitting just upstream of this egg pocket. Little flash of red right behind those bubbles. pretty rewarding to see some fish back right now, even though it's very early in the return. These surveys will help inform, where we collect fish we use for the supplementation program and how many fish we might collect in a really low return year. It's good to see some fish in there. It'd be a lot better if there were 50 or 100 fish, but we'll take what we can get. Yeah, I can go get those.
We are in the process of trying to catch kokanee spawners. Kokanee move at night, so we're out here at night. We've got a weir. A weir is basically a fish trap. Close off most of the stream, funnel them into a catch box, and we can easily net them out to take to the hatchery to get them ready to spawn. We set the weirs on 3 different streams. We'll rotate, checking all 3 throughout the night to see if we've got fish in the catch boxes here.
All right, let's go get these fish.
I don't see anything.
Yeah, nothing. All right, next spot. Nada. No fish.
How there's not as much life around anywhere as there was even 10 years ago. Do what we can do.
Yeah. On to Ebright.
That's Ebright Creek.
Oh, look at the size of that one. Nice.
Sweet.
Beautiful. That's a female.
I think so.
Yep.
The mother of future generations.
Get ready, though.
I'm ready.
Nice. All right.
And run her up and...
Yep.
All right.
Well done.
There you go, baby. Nice.
Look at the nice spotting under it. Let's get her over to the hatchery. She's gonna have to sit there wondering
what the heck's
going on.
Posted online.
Yeah.
Kokanee on board. Our first female kokanee. On the way to the hatchery now.
That's a big female.
I opened it and went, whoa.
Yeah. I thought it was a coho at first. So we are here today with leaders and partners to make sure that folks know that this is really an extraordinary project and some extraordinary circumstances for this population. I do want to say that this return is a bad return. We have not seen kokanee in this creek this fall. We're probably going to have a run of fewer than 100 fish, which will give us 3 years in a row of fewer than 100 fish. That's never happened before in our record. So it is a dire situation. But the fish that are returning are tough survivor fish. And
and we're banking on them as being the launching point for the survival of the population going forward.
If we do not do all the right things, they will be lost forever. We're in an era where we're seeing the beginnings of a global ecological collapse. We're identifying the places where we can still rescue and restore and return the natural environment that is our legacy. This is the work we have to do. This is our sacred obligation.
With our salmon, it's like losing one of your tribes. The work that's going on here, it's just not for us today, it's for our future generations. There's nothing more important than that.
I think it's really important that folks understand what we have and what's at risk of being lost, and the role that every person in this watershed, in the region, can play in protecting that. Once you lose those things, it's really, really hard to get that back. So while you have it, you should work to protect it. As bad as things are, the strength of our partnership, we're able to move quickly. We have an egg box. We have eggs in hand that we can put in that egg box, and that we think is going to be an important start to having fish back on this stream in the future.
This is going to be a tough one for these fish to bounce back from. But what energizes me is that you've got folks at every level working together to make this happen. It's pretty incredible.
Hello, hello.
Hello. How are you doing?
Very good. So good to see you.
Good to see you.
The baby. Yes. Hi there.
Is everybody else down here?
Yeah, they're all milling around out there. Okay. Nice. We lined up the sunlight right on the egg box.
You guys want to see them before
we get over there? Ladies.
Say hello. Yeah. Oh, wow.
So you can see their little eye spots.
Good morning to you.
The white line on the top is actually their spinal cord.
Our story is kind of a story of hope, that a community working together can really accomplish something special.
This is our remote stream incubator. Water travels up through the bottom and then exits through this hole. And the way it's designed is that once these fish hatch and are ready to leave to the stream, they can actually release themselves.
It just feels good to see people working together on something that's important, and it's a shared importance. That connection, everybody feels it. It's whether you honor it. How will you honor it in your life?
We'll pinch eggs.
Here, I'll go.
The work represents the shared commitment to these locations and to the fish. It is that foundation for our future. We are always praying and thinking about those generations still to come. If we're not to carry that on, then who is? Every one of us needs to carry that forward. It's time to rebuild those connections.
Hey,